Hey there, I'm Brittany Schroeder, and business and marketing are my jam. I'm here to walk you step by step through this crazy thing we call business. I'm a small town girl, chocolate eating, Diet Coke drinking mom, marketing guru, automation Jedi, and all around good time. This is your weekly dose of all things business and life, sprinkled with some fun. This is the Redefine Business Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Redefine Business Podcast. I'm excited for my guest today because it's a little bit different than normally what I have. And I stumbled across Katie because we were doing a summit together and I was following some of the other speakers. And I was super fascinated because I'm like, what does this girl do? And so I reached out to her and said, come get my podcast. So I want to welcome to the show, Katie Tremulis. She is the Notary online coach. And if you're like me, you're like, okay, what is that? So Katie, introduce yourself and tell my listeners what you do.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me on. My name is Katie, and I am a remote online notary. So for those of you who might not be aware, remote online notarization is basically getting documents notarized through a secure platform. So the signer is doing this through their laptop, and I basically have this as a career. So I'm excited to be here.
So we've all at some point in our life had to get something notarized, whether that is we're closing on a home or, we're applying for something that needs to be notarized. And so a lot of times we go to a bank or we go to like a UPS or something. So how did you online, tell how you decided to do it like online, how you turn this into a business.
Yes. So this is not anything that was in my 10-year plan. This is not something that I thought that I was ever going to do. But about 3 years ago, I went through a divorce and some life changes, and I was previously in finance, but that wasn't going to work with me because the cost of childcare was going to be more than what I was going to be able to make at a normal 9 to 5. So I was basically panicking for however many months of how I'm going to support myself with this new change within my life. So I stumbled across a post on social media of someone talking about how they were a notary and they made it into a full-time career. And I was like, well, I was in finance. I've been a notary for 10 years. I can do that. So I started doing in-person notarizations. So it's basically like you get contracted or you work with different companies that need notarizations. And then you go out to the people with the paperwork, get everything notarized, and then ship it off. Well, that was great. But I was on the road for so long and just away from my family that I was like, this is good and it's working, but I don't really like it as much. Then I stumbled across some of the paperwork that said, are you doing this remotely or are you doing this in person? And then that set me down this whole rabbit hole of trying to figure out what the heck remote is. And so I'm in the state of Florida. That's something that's available to me as a notary. So I went through the whole process of becoming a remote online notary and then really did a ton of research to be able to make this into a career. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And then I started to become a coach because I didn't have any resources that I could find on how to do this because I was in a 9 to 5. I had no idea what I was doing when I was starting my own business. I had so many hiccups and so many things that I did wrong that, I was like, okay, there was some people that were asking about how I did it and everything like that. And so I started putting out some of the information on social media and that kind of took off. And so now I do coaching as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love this too, because this is a good example of scaling. We start in our businesses and we're just trying to kind of trying to figure it out. And then we figured out, and that's where, I think that's where people get stuck on scaling. They have like one thing. So for example, like maybe you're a photographer and you can't, how do you scale? You can raise your prices to a certain amount, but at a certain point you kind of cap. And so then it's like, how can you scale? And it's using the resources that you already have and the skills that you already have. Can you teach others to do what you're doing? And I think that's kind of just how we can scale is, are we in a position where we can teach? That's kind of like the next step, I feel like, in a lot of like businesses to scale. It's, can you teach others? Have you become the expert in what you do and you teach others? And that is really how you scale, is having these different things in your products. You notarize for people, but you also teach, and that's how you really grow. So I love, because I never you're a unicorn, I think, Katie, because I don't know anybody else who does what you do. So you're rare. So, but I love that you have taken what you're doing and you've scaled. So how do you work with, like, is it one-on-one? Do you have a membership? Like, how do you teach people to do the online part of Notary?
Yes. So I was doing one-on-ones, and that was great. But at the same time, there was only so much time in the day.
Yeah.
So I also made a course as well. So I made a course that has everything that I could possibly jam into a course, where it's basically A to Z on how to get started, down to invoicing and how to schedule everything. Because I have people that, are working second jobs or even, more. And they're like, well, how do I schedule? And I'm like, I can tell you how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because even when I was kind of working before, during the divorce, I had 5 different jobs.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't ideal. Like, it wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. And I was like, okay, there is something different. I just haven't found it yet. And then the social media post. So I was like, okay, cool. This is perfect. But yeah, so I do one-on-one coaches. I do webinars every once in a while. And then I also have my course that people can kind of, do it at any time within their schedule, because nobody's cookie cutter, and everybody's lifestyle is a little bit different. So
yeah. And I love it. I think this is just a good example of how you can scale and evolve. And it's done through trial and error, where it's, you're being a notary, and then you're like, okay, how can I grow this even more? And then it's like, then you do one-on-one coaching, and then you're like, how else? And this is a perfect example of like a product suite. You have different products and different offers for different people in different journeys. And so I love this. And it's also a good just example of like, anybody can do it. What are you doing now? How can you grow that? Like, this is something that, like, people wouldn't even think of. And maybe some of my listeners out there have a little side hustle, or maybe they're doing something and they are like, well, it's just a side hustle. I couldn't possibly turn this into a career. And you can, like, there's so much opportunity out there. And so I love that you have done that. That's so awesome. Well, okay, Katie, tell my listeners how they can work with you, or maybe they're looking for something like this. They're a stay at home, they're looking for a side hustle, or they're looking for something. Tell them how they can work with you.
Sure. So I have my own website. So it is, and pardon the name, because I started it and I was only an in-person notary. I didn't really think that it was going to be national. So it's Notary SWFL, like southwestflorida.com. So Notary SWFL. If you wanted to find me on YouTube, it's just under my name. So it's under Katie and then Tremulis, which is Tremulis. And then I'm on Instagram as well as Notary SWFL, and I post almost every single day.
Oh, awesome. You're good. Okay. I'm kind of going back. I have one more question. Is online notary, can you do it in every state, or is it only in specific states?
So it's only in specific states.
Okay.
So I do have a freebie on how to find out if this is something that you're able to do. Now, you can be a mobile notary in any state. And I 100% recommend that, because even if you have a side hustle that it makes sense to do it because it's something that you can pick up on the side. So
Yeah.
I go into a little bit of depth, but there's companies that will give you work based on your area as a mobile notary. So I kind of recommend that as the starting point. And then if it's available in your state, become a Ron. So
That's awesome. Very, very
yeah.
cool. Well, very cool. Well, yeah, I will put all of her information in the show notes if this is something you're interested in. I just love this story. I think it's such a cool story of, like turning, something into like a business and scaling. So it's awesome. Okay, Katie, I like to end all of my shows with asking my guests 2 questions. So the first one is, what is a pet peeve of yours?
Okay, so a pet peeve of mine is saying, like, when people say to me, "Oh, like, how's your little side business going?" or anything like that, because I've turned it into a career.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a pet peeve.
Yes. Yes.
But it's an education point, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah. 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 And that's a pet peeve for sure. And what's a simple pleasure?
I absolutely love my commute because my commute is usually just somewhere within my house over to my office. So I'm very thankful.
Simple pleasure. Yes. When you can work from home for sure. And you have kids. So awesome. Well, Katie, thank you so much. This was so fun. I loved hearing your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Let's not stop the party here. Head on over to my Instagram or Facebook group, Redefine Your Business, and let me know your thoughts about today's show. I will see you again, same time, same place, next week.